For me, climate change is only too real. I come from Gisborne. We have been absolutely clobbered by severe weather events over the last couple of years. Cyclone Gabriel was really devastating for the East Coast community. We had rivers come through our homes. It shut down a lot of our farming operations, which had a huge economic impact on our people. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, but the devastating impact of flooding and erosion in our whenua, it's nothing new. When our original native forests in Tairāwhiti were cleared and converted to pasture, the steep hillsides gave way in heavy rain. It was an absolute disaster. Pines were planted with the hope of stabilising the land and supporting our local economy. But as we found with Cyclone Gabriel, those same pine plantations were far less resilient than our native forests. The problem was that those pine trees were a monoculture and they had single root systems that were all the same depth. So when you got saturation of water, whole swathes of forest fell into our rivers. The pine slash that got washed off the hill was hurled along the rivers like missiles, really, clearing out the forests and the vegetation along those riverbanks and folding them into the rivers and sending them out into the seas and onto our beaches. That was confronting, but the thing that was most confronting, I guess, was that we, in this day and age, are making decisions that will impact the next generation and the generation after that. It really hit home that we need to be conscious about building a future that is sustainable and that is solid for our landscapes. If we don't figure out a market driver, financial mechanisms to get diverse native forests back on our hills, our region and our people are in real trouble. Recloaking Papatūānuku is a long-term vision, but there's no time to waste. It'll take all of us working together. To bring back resilience to our landscapes, we need to think like a forest.
Rehua and I love eating people in the bush, and this fern here, moku, is one of our favourites.
I'm Sam the Trap Man. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisher, I'm a trapper. I just love getting out amongst it. The bush looks after us, so I reckon it's my job to look after the bush too. I'm not alone. All over Aotearoa, people are already working to recloak Papatūānuku. I'm going to meet some of them and hear about their work. We're going to explore how we can restore, regenerate and protect diverse native forests at scale and why this is so important and urgent right now.
Forests are amazing. They provide habitat for so many native species and they keep our water clean, they keep our hills together, they give us oxygen, that's useful. They provide food for us, it's just endless.
We've got weeds and we've got pest species that are throwing our ngahere out of balance. It's actually our responsibility as the ones who have brought those species in to return that balance. So it's quite obvious that we've got a role to play in the forest ecosystem.
These trees have been here a lot longer than farming's been in this environment. It's about using those natural assets to actually have a mosaic within the landscape of highly productive areas of the farm whilst protecting a whole lot of really important biodiversity.
When we're talking about recloaking Papatūānuku, we're talking about weaving. You know, we need to make sure the productive land stays productive, and it's about weaving farming and horticulture, making sure that we've got proper cloak on the erodible slopes and around the waterways. And I think we need that all across the country.
Graham Atkins is one of the most knowledgeable people I know when it comes to plants. He's an ecologist, a hunter and a farmer who's been working to regenerate our landscapes in Tairāwhiti for more than 3 decades.
What is the work that you're most excited about at the moment?
pretty much tile mahi spins my wheels, and so a big part of that is restoration mahi, so restoration ecology. I just believe that there's space for what we need as humans to survive and pay our bills, but there's also space for the original owners of this whenua, our indigenous flora and fauna. Over my time, 30 years working in this space, I've watched a lot of species, plants especially, go from once upon a time being common. They're just not there anymore in decent numbers, and it just relates to the spread of deer, possums and goats. But we can manage their numbers whereby we get ecosystem recovery, which has to be number one, because you're nothing without healthy tile.
The damage caused by these browsers means the impact of climate change on our tile is even worse. It seems to be one of the things that we need to do is retain the water in our landscapes, both so that it doesn't run off the hills into our rivers, but also to retain moisture to prevent fire risk. What role do you think native forest plays in retaining moisture and water in our landscapes?
I can recall when there was just moss carpet, and it was on the trunks, on all the branches, in the canopy and all over the floor. That whole thing there was all about swelling in heavy rain and then slow releasing, so it regulated stream flows throughout the year. On the lowlands, that giant sponge would re-energise all the aquifers, and so huge impact. When you talked about climate change and what lies ahead, to me that's the priority, is to get that those protection values back, because it's a waste of time trying to save the kiwi if the kiwi's home is falling to pieces. And so get those protection values back and then go from there. So big mahi.
Graham is a trustee at Waikiruru Eco Sanctuary on the Waimata River. It's places like this that give me hope. Malcolm Rutherford has been working with landowners here to restore the native ngahere and bring diversity back to this landscape.
Brother, we are here at Waikiruru Sanctuary, and this here is a really unique and important forest system for our region. Why is that?
25 years ago, this was farmland. And right since the start, it's been really well looked after. There's been predator control and deer and goat control. And so there's actually a really wide range of species in what looks like in places just Kānuka forest. It's got amazing things underneath it, and they're just waiting to get going. They're waiting for a light gap to go through and become that next canopy.
Dame Salmon and her whānau have been working on restoring Waikiruru since they bought the property 25 years ago.
When we arrived, it was all pasture. It was absolutely bare.
Like normal sheep and beef farms?
Yeah, that's what it was.
What are some of the tools that you use to bring this back?
Well, we were really lucky because we have this beautiful stretch of old bush right along the edge of the Waimata here. The first thing we did was we took advice from Doc and we fenced it. We planted large groves of berry-bearing trees for the birds right along the foothills. That's all cyclone boulder slump. And it worked. As soon as those trees started cropping, then they flew up into the hills. And they planted the hills for us largely.
Nestled in the heart of Waikiruru is the 1769 seed archive.
1769 was when the Western world on the Endeavour met Te Ao Māori, and everything in this country changed. That garden has so many of those stories baked into the design of the garden, the plant selection.
I'm really interested in the role the 1769 garden plays in regenerating our landscape.
We actually call the garden the 1769 Seed Archive. And one of the things about conservation in New Zealand often is it's protected. If something's protected, you can't touch it. And we're like, no, this is protected, but come, take cuttings, take seeds, because we've got to get this stuff out there.
You work with some of our amazing landowners, some incredible farmers, some incredible foresters. What do you think the appetite is in Tairāwhiti for concepts such as Recloaking Papatūānuku?
Well, I think the exciting thing is that it's really, you can see the change. Some of my landowners I work with, I had one in particular who, the first contact I had with him was, how do I get rid of this covenant? I want to put my cattle in there and graze it. And on the most recent visit, you know, this is kind of 8 years on, he's like, come and look at the riparian planting I've done. And that's not because of me, that's because of a whole change in the way people are seeing biodiversity on farms. And every little bit of that bush on farms helps in so many ways.
Both the old growth and the regenerating forests at Waikareru were crucial to the resilience of this whenua during the recent cyclones.
The Waimata River was the river that delivered all those logs that just about took out the bridges in town here in Gisborne and landed up all over the beaches and in the bay. And the thing that happened here at Waikareru is because we have this stand of surviving native bush, the roots of that stand of forest, which is really old, that held the riverbank together.
Diverse forests and those interconnected roots and that huru layer sitting on top of it. That's the forest that we saw stay on the hill.
The thing that I've learned about natural forest is that it's layered, you know, so everything's doing a job. The hills here, we only had one small slip. That's about 12 years of regeneration.
I've got some really big questions around the economics of Recloaking Papatūānuku. A lot of our farmers are cash poor and time poor.
Yes.
When it comes to tairāwhiti, Recloaking Papatūānuku is something that we all want. But how do we implement it here at home?
Well, for me, I'd far prefer that the finance actually comes locally, because in the end, it's going to be a question about who is the guardian of this place. I'm a member of the Waimata Catchment Group Committee, so we know every farmer in the catchment. Sheep and beef farming is hard at the moment economically. It's not as though they've got a whole lot of money to spend on trapping and fencing and things like that. As you know, this sort of work never stops. And so we need a long-term vision. I do think that the government and any government ought to take responsibility for the future of our beautiful islands, because that's the future of our people as well. The farmers love looking after their land in this way and still then being able to make a living. And if they could make a living partly by recloaking Papatūānuku around the waterways and on those highly erodible parts of the farm.
In those less productive landscapes.
Totally.
We just need the financial models and the political backing to achieve this great vision.
Mana whenua are leading the way when it comes to recloaking Papatūānuku. Renee Raroa has been doing amazing mahi on her ancestral whenua and finding innovative ways to fund it.
For our whenua at Te Kotuku, we are underway with regeneration of the whenua, so it's over 900 hectares there. We have a beautiful Ngā Whenua Rāhui block that's had some protection already, so we can look at the species and the biodiversity that we have in there and say, how can we bring that back to the landscapes that we'd cleared for pasture?
On the coast here, we're in such a unique position. Like, we must have one of the highest amounts of whenua Māori percentage-wise out of any region, hey? How do you think reforesting our landscapes can happen in a way that fits with whenua Māori?
There is so much opportunity in the knowledge that we've gained over generations and generations of evolving with our landscapes that we can carry through to solutions for recloaking our whenua. But there's also some challenges. To get resource onto whenua Māori, to borrow against it is a real challenge, because there's not the same equity in the land because you can't sell it. You've got hundreds of stakeholders. For some whenua Māori, you haven't even got decision makers on that land block, so you might not even have a trust set up to make the decision. So yeah, there's plenty of challenges there, but I think if we can lean into designing first for whenua Māori, then we will come up with solutions that work for all land types.
We struggle to get funding into region to do a lot of this work, but the levers that you have been able to pull are just phenomenal.
Economic viability for our whenua has always been a challenge. So we've always had to be a little bit creative, I suppose, with our revenue streams for that whenua. And now what we're looking at is, hey, how can we create new revenue streams that are actually as much as possible in alignment with our roles as kaitiaki of that whenua. For a point in time, we did a little bit of regenerative tourism, so that's one thing that is closer to alignment, but another is to have the data and the information from that whenua that tells our story, that shows the awesome work that's being done, actually monetised. So I see data as another way of telling our story, and it's a form of storytelling that markets can see. So what we've been exploring is nature markets and how we might use those nature markets to bring more resource into our regeneration projects for the whenua on our own terms.
So people are genuinely interested in our biodiversity in Aotearoa as overseas international funders.
We often don't realise how special we are here and how much we have an opportunity to protect the remaining biodiversity that exists on the planet. Internationally, there is a big interest in supporting places that can enable more nature to exist, because when you enable nature and help to restore it in one place, it actually has a global impact. And so that's what a lot of these markets are looking for.
Nature markets are emerging, but the carbon market has been around for a while now. I want to learn more about how it can impact the movement to Recloaking Papatūānuku. My friend, ecologist Professor David Norton, understands a lot about forest ecology and conservation, and also about carbon in different types of forests. So what role does native forest play in the carbon sector?
Yeah, plays two really important roles. So first of all, our existing old growth forests, they're holding huge amounts of carbon in the biosphere. If we look after those, that carbon stays in the biosphere. So they're stores of carbon. But then these new forests, like this little planting we're in here now, these are sequestering, drawing carbon down out of the atmosphere. And the great thing about these forests is that they're permanent.
Where I come from, up in Tairāwhiti, we're starting to see forests go into permanent pine plantation as carbon forests. And then we're hearing also that native forests sequester carbon. And so often for landowners, we are wondering, should we go to pines for the short-term gains, or should we go for native forests with the hope that it delivers carbon sequestration over time?
There's no two ways about it. Pine trees sequester a lot of carbon over the first 30, 40 years of their life. Then that curve of carbon being sequestered flattens off, and those forests will eventually collapse, because pine forests are early, fast-growing trees. They don't form long-term permanent forests. When those trees start dying and losing their carbon, who's going to be responsible for replacing that carbon, and who's going to pay for that?
Right.
The guys who planted them have got all the credits, or your grandchildren and my grandchildren? Our native forests are much slower, so the curve will be a lot lower, coming up more slowly, but it will surpass the pine forest after maybe 60, 80, 100 years, and will continue to grow.
After interviewing other people on this journey, I think that there has to be some form of balance between the financial model and the environmental benefits, right? And so it seems that we do need a tool to be able to incentivize replanting native forests.
In my mind, there's two fundamental problems we're facing at the moment in Aotearoa, New Zealand. The first is that pine trees get an unfair incentive through the emissions trading scheme. There's a huge incentive there for people to put it into pine trees, as you described, with no consideration to the future. So ideally, we need to change those policy settings to account for future management of those pines, and that doesn't happen. But the second thing we need to have a realistic incentive, maybe a carbon plus biodiversity type of credit that recognises all the other values that these native forests provide that pine trees can never provide. And once we've got that tool, then native forests are going to win hands down every time.
David has been central to the restoration of Te Moana bush here in North Canterbury. Its funding comes through Transwaste Canterbury, a public-private partnership between 5 local councils and Waste Management New Zealand. Gil Cox has supported the project right from the start.
The Transwaste company owns 1,300 hectares here. In the middle of that 1,300 hectares is a landfill. That's 37 hectares. It's tiny relative to the footprint. We saw the opportunity to offer back to the community a QE2 covenanted ecological recovery area, if you like, that we call Te Moana bush. People or businesses, when they have waste they have to dispose of, have to pay for it to be taken away. The profits that are earned are distributed back to shareholders. But prior to that, we put money back into the development of the bush, the tracks, and the replanting of the bush.
So you're treating the land, the landscape itself, as a shareholder?
Absolutely. This has got a 200 to 300 year vision, which is to take this part of the country back to East Coast, South Island, lowland forest. The only way it'll work in the long run if we've got consistency of investment. We have done exotic planting of both radiata and cypress, where we can take a commercial return off that forest and use that in the very long term, post the closure of the landfill, to continue the development of Turramana bush, because you don't do these sort of things without some funding.
Funding the project in the short term allows you to create those long-term gains. Eh?
Absolutely.
Turramana bush is in many ways a really good microcosm of what Recloaking Papatūānuku is about. So we've got an old growth forest remnant which we're looking after. It's obviously protected now, there's no grazing animals. But we've also got natural regeneration. We're just allowing the forest to return of its own accord. And we're also enriching some of those forests by planting into them. So totara and matai, which are two of the podocarps that would have been really dominant here, and kaikatira, of course. When we're talking about nature and native forests, we're talking about the long term. So these trees here are, 16 years old. But this won't be representative of what might have been here at some point in the past for maybe 100 years. But it's worth waiting for. Remember, a mature totara might live for 400 years. So our lifespans are just a blink in the eye, in a sense, in terms of those trees.
I'm just sitting there thinking about 400 years of totara fruit.
How many grandchildren
And
down the line is that?
and how many generations of kids that's feeding? You're just making me excited, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, and again, I just can't overemphasize this enough. It's not just about the carbon issues, it's not just about the water, it's not just about the biodiversity, it's what you're saying, it's about the people and how people can connect to this. And imagine your grandchildren or my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren, I'm a little bit older than you, coming into here in 50 years' time and actually enjoying a forest.
There's still heaps of work to do to create financial models and incentives for long-term restoration projects. But different types of landowners are already finding ways to protect and restore our native ngāhere. Farmers around Aotearoa are such an important part of our vision to recloak Papatūānuku and return resilience to our landscapes, and many are already doing the mahi on the ground. On Banks Peninsula, Williston Farms is another haven of biodiversity. It's an interwoven landscape that combines protected old-growth forests, regenerating bush and livestock in a productive farming model. Matt manages the farm and Shannon works as a shepherdess. What are some of the actions you guys have taken on your place to ensure that you can have a productive farming system for the future, and also alongside that have these beautiful forests flourishing?
So look, a couple of things. I guess that the important thing is we actually get support from a group of people to give us advice and to actually create a plan as to what we want to do for the long term. So we have a long-term biodiversity management plan. Certain areas that are more appropriate for biodiversity than farming, we're excluding livestock, and that means that we can actually concentrate our productive part of the farm on the areas where we're getting the most return. We're currently undertaking some possum control. Obviously the pigs and the goats has been a really big part of it because they've had the most impact, both on the biodiversity but also the productive farmland as well.
Shannon, how do you feel when you're out here mastering stock in this type of farming system?
It's pretty incredible. I love shepherding and I feel like I've got so much more to learn, especially here. I'm definitely very fast-paced, must be go, 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 go all the time. So I can get pretty wound up and tense at times. And I just love when you come out in country like this, you can slow down and just have the moment of not rushing. Most farmers love the environment. We love being outside in the nature, so it's definitely something that most farmers hold dear to their hearts.
I've noticed your streams are beautiful cobble-bottom streams. You have a lot of bush hugging those rivers, and so when it rains, you mustn't have a lot of dirt washing off into those creeks, because you've got the forest around those bank systems.
It's retaining water, but it's also protecting any sediment loss, any nutrient loss as well. But it is one of the real assets of this farm and farm system.
Up the coast from Gisborne, at Uawa, there's a special forest remnant called Pāroa. Mere Tamanui is one of our kaitiaki here. She understands firsthand the role the forest plays in the health of our people, our whenua and our awa, especially as the impacts of climate change increase. Our forests have been going through a lot of change in our generation, hey? We're starting to see some serious degradation coupled with large storm events, the impacts of climate change. You're also a freshwater specialist. Can you tell us a little bit about how the health of the forest impacts our awa?
I guess Kiutakitai, our highland forests, are just as important as our lowland forests, and being able to support and create a balanced ecosystem for our awa and our whenua along the way, connecting our aquifers with our awa and our puna. The cyclones have been a huge impact for Aotearoa, or the riverbed that's been smothered in sediment and silt. Our awa's unable to breathe. It's almost like I'm suffocating and choking myself. Waterways aren't just waterways for us. They're our cultural spaces of healing, of mahinga kai, of so many different ceremonies to be able to bring the oranga back to our whānau. So for healthy water, fresh water, means healthy people for us, and in order to have that, we need our forests. I love water, but I can't do water without trees.
So we are in this beautiful kahikatea, pukatea forest. Tell us about this piece of bush and how it connects to this wider landscape around us.
Well, this bush is hugely significant to our lowland forests. We don't have many of them left, but this is one of the strongholds that's able to, well, gather all the excess water that's coming down from the maunga. It's made up of all our pukatea and our kahikatea, our kiakea, our mokturepo. It is a sanctuary for our wildlife, for our manu, for our mahinga kai, our rongoa to collect. It's our kohanga reo to be able to come and harvest and share out those gems. It's a happy space, happy place, and we love to bring people in here. And I can guarantee you, after they've gone out, kia tau te wairu o rātou.
It really strikes me that there are so many different people around Aotearoa who want to see more native forests in our landscapes. Sam Rowland works at Tairāwhiti Environment Centre and helps to support our important mahi tile up and down the East Coast. We have many farmers that we work with as individuals. We have many catchment groups. We have many Māori trust blocks. We have people with so much experience to be able to roll out and establish forests, weed forests, maintain forests, do the browser and the predator control. Now seems like the perfect time to take action. How do people on the ground wanting to recloak the whenua access the financial support to be able to achieve what their aspirations are?
At the moment, it's few and far between, but there's real opportunity to really get financing into region. We need to have these public-private partnerships to really push this forward. The role that Tairāwhiti Environment Centre plays is really just being able to connect together local government, central government, businesses, community, iwi hapu, all of those that should be playing this role, because we need to work together to solve this problem. It's not something that we can do in isolation.
When we're talking about recloaking Aotearoa, do you think regionally there's going to be different solutions to the same sort of problems?
100%, yeah. What we found in our region, we've had some great opportunities from money coming in, from central government, from businesses, but
There's a lot of conditions attached to that, and usually it's not across the whole system. It's looking at certain parts. So here's some money to go and do predator control, you know, or go and do this component of it. What we've been trying to do a lot with our mahi is say, let's change that from the I'm a funder, I'm going to come in and dictate what you need to do as the person getting the funding, and let's move that model into more of a partnership model, and let's work together and let's co-create and let's make sure that we can meet everyone's needs. But at the core of that, we're all working for the same outcome, which is regenerating nature at scale. And the benefits from that are just huge.
One of the places I know that really shows these benefits is Titirangi Maunga, near the centre of Gisborne. George Tibble has been working on the Whaia Titirangi restoration project through Te Poho o Rawiri Marae ever since I've known her.
When I experienced Titirangi as a young person, it was a place of pine trees, of pasture. But now when I come to Titirangi, it's a place of regenerating forests. How do you think that impacts our urban community?
People are starting to notice the changes up here, the bird life. I think it is having a pretty cool, positive impact on how we view our environment now. Being a hapu-led project in Tairāwhiti is huge. It means a lot to us as rangatahi coming into mahi. It's a lot different than planting pines and a 9-to-5 job. Being at Pohorawiri and delving into tikanga and kawa and things like that, and then learning about that through our mahi here on Titirangi, it really, I don't know, it kind of strengthens you as a person. I guess it gives you more, well, for me personally, self-worth. It's understanding whakapapa, it's understanding rongoa, not for just yourself, but for the maunga and the awa.
If I was to ask you, George, what thinking like a forest means, what would you say?
Our forests go through all sorts of stuff, you know, so you got to be flexible, you got to be strong, and if something knocks you down, you just got to persevere and keep going, keep growing. Yeah.
Thinking like a forest reminds me that we are collective and diverse. The forest is not one tree on its own, ever.
I think of everything in the forest, an ecosystem. A forest to function needs to all work together. And I feel like that's exactly the same as a community. We need everyone all coming together to figure out how to regenerate at scale.
It's about thinking long term, not about tomorrow or next week or next year or the next election. It's about thinking right out there. And it's about thinking not only about the fact that the forests are going to be here for a long time, it's about thinking about those future generations of people.
For me, it's not about carbon solely. It's about everything that happens. It's about the life on the land and in the water. If you don't think like that, I don't believe you can bring it back to life.
Recloaking Papatūānuku is a call to action on many levels. It will require policy shift, innovative funding solutions, and it will also require communities putting trees in the ground, as well as doing the predator control and the browser control to keep them there. It's about creating those interwoven landscapes where both biodiversity and people can thrive. To me, thinking like a forest is about choosing to be part of our ecosystems. It's about working more closely with nature and building resilience for our future together. This is kawakawa, and the females have long, voluptuous orange fruit in summer, and they are absolutely delicious. They taste like rock melon with a little peppery aftertaste. The thing is, though, that those fruit, they make you poo. The huru layer is made up of all these different beautiful palatable ferns. The goats and deer love to eat them too. So usually, where there's goats and deer present, there are hardly ever these tasty ferns to eat. These here are tawaka mushrooms and they are absolutely delicious. Fungus plays an incredible role in our forest ecosystems. Do you know trees, they communicate not just through their roots, but through the mycelium networks, through those mushrooms as well. This is Tātara Moa. Tātara Moa leaves help us brew up a really great sleepy tea. And when I have to sleep in the bush, sometimes with no hut, with no bedroll, just on the cold hard ground, I come to Tātara Moa.